Welcome to the commentary booth, where we watch and, you guessed it, commentate on the week that was in movies and TV. I'm your host and play-by-play commentator Jamie Apps, and each week I'm joined by a rotating cast of colour commentators to help you find your next viewing treat. This week I'm joined by an impact fee technician who lists their favourite movie as A Nightmare on Elm Street and favourite TV show as Golden Girls. Welcome back to the show, Corrina Mabey.
Hello, good morning on your side of the world. Afternoon, I guess.
Morning just.
Okay, yeah.
How's everything going?
It's going. Apparently we're modeling after your weather pattern, so thanks for that.
Yeah, it's hot.
It's a little gross. We had really cold weather yesterday, and then I woke up this morning and I was in shorts and a t-shirt. Oh, this is cool. So great.
Lovely. So we're back again this week for another episode in our series of reviews covering The Last of Us TV show. Today we're looking at episode 7. This episode sees us rejoining Ellie and Joel in the aftermath of the attack at the university. And during this episode we get a lot more information about Ellie's backstory, which builds around the Left Behind DLC from The Last of Us game. What did you think of this episode before we dive in too deeply?
I appreciated this episode, just because having not played the game all the way through, it did give me more insight into Ellie's character development and why she kind of is the way she is. As far as being really reserved and having her guard up and stuff around people.
Yeah, I thought this was a very well done episode, and it captured the DLC pretty much spot on. I don't think there is much, if anything, I would have changed about this episode in terms of how it covered that DLC and how it progresses the story of Joel and Ellie and their relationship. And I think it was cool to sort of split their origin stories apart too, with Joel's being right at the beginning. Then in episode 3 we get a little bit more about him, but then Ellie's kind of just, we've been with her and now we're going back to learn why she is the way she is.
Yeah, I feel like if they had tried to mush that into one kind of episode, or just graze upon it slightly here and there, it wouldn't have been as impactful as leaving them in their own individual stands.
And I think it's also really cool that they incorporated this DLC element of the game, because playing that first game, you never actually get this story until I think it was a year or two later that the DLC came out, if not longer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, it was...
Gave you a reason to come back to it eventually, is what it seems like.
It was such a good DLC when it came out, but yeah, it was kind of we don't actually know anything really about Ellie up until that DLC, and to have that in this show I think was important, to have people build that connection with her.
Absolutely.
So now diving into the episode a bit more, it opens with the camera panning through the suburbs of some random town, and we see the blood trail in the snow. What did you think of that opening moment?
It was kind of a moment where you realize just how serious things are getting. Joel's always kind of seemed like a badass, he brushes off everything, and so now you get to see that it's not going to be that easy. He's still pretty injured, and you don't know what's going to happen at this point between him and Ellie, or what's going to happen to Ellie.
Especially with seeing the blood trail, it's kind of oh yeah, he's definitely in a bad way, and she has, from the looks of it, dragged him through the snow to just get to some form of shelter, and at least now they have this shelter. And then we go into Ellie in sort of panic mode, trying to treat the wound as best she can, and Joel essentially telling her, leave me, I'm done, go back to Tommy, and she's just not having any of that. She wants to stick with him, even though then we see her walk out of the basement, and it's kind of like, is she actually leaving him? Which is a really cool sort of way to do that, set that up.
Yeah, this whole episode really shows Ellie's dedication to Joel, really wanting him to continue on, and how she really only fully trusts him. Like, she could go back to Tommy, but I don't think that she is that trust issue, or like that bond essentially, that she has with Joel, and I know she's never going to find it probably. So, you know, she was really, really, really dedicated to healing him or helping him out and stuff.
Especially because, like, as we spoke about in the previous episode, which was kind of the episode that cemented their bond, to now see her having to deal with how do I make sure that this guy that I actually care about now doesn't die. I'm just going to have to figure it out and do something. But I love that shot where she walks up, closes the door, and it's kind of like, oh, she's gone. But then we don't follow her anymore. We get the flashback to her at school, and this is where we lead into the DLC moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really good kind of transition from current to past, essentially, and just leading that up, so you didn't really know what was going to happen in the next scene.
Yeah, it has you, leaves you thinking of, is she leaving? Is she going to come back? Or is she just like trying to take a moment to settle herself and gather her thoughts of, okay, what do I actually need to do here?
Absolutely, yeah.
And when we flash back to Ellie at the Fedra school, we get to see a nice little nostalgic moment of her running around listening to a Walkman, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people, especially not like younger kids today, wouldn't even know what the hell a Walkman is.
Especially even like, she probably didn't really know what it was. It was kind of just a remnant of the pre-outbreak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really fun to see her utilizing things that we recognize from ages ago. And to her, it's probably brand new, you know? It's a fun thing for her to just kind of be able to pop in.
Especially because, yeah, like, I imagine when the outbreak happened, the internet probably went down at some point. So it's not like you can run around with a smartphone and just listen to Spotify or something like that. Like, yeah, you have to go back to those analog forms of entertainment with tapes and things like that.
Cassette tapes and rewinding and fast forwarding. Kids these days have it main.
But then we see a bigger girl at the school picking on Ellie, and just like classic Ellie, she's not taking any of that. She immediately fights back and ends up being dragged in front of the captain in the captain's office, and kind of we learn that she's kind of always been rebellious, but in the past few weeks something has made her even worse, and we don't understand exactly why, but we learn that the girl she fought, Bethany, has been in the infirmary and had to get 15 stitches from what Ellie did to her, so she's definitely not one to mess with, even back here at Fedra.
I mean, that little shit deserved it. So, Team Ellie. But yeah, no, I feel like, you know, it's a great example of even modern day bullying and stuff like that, and where kids have to just take matters into their own hands at that point.
Mm-hmm. But then the captain sort of gives Ellie like two paths to choose from. Like, he says that he sees her as a leader, but she's got to start getting into line, otherwise she's going to end up as a grunt, essentially, which is not a great idea, because becoming an officer has a lot more perks. It's a bit safer, you get hot food, and yeah, like I said, he believes she's a leader, so she has two paths to choose: head down the leadership path, or continue to be rebellious and end up in this really shitty situation where she's going out into the wild and fighting and things like that. And she obviously decides to go the leadership role, and I think it's that sort of moment that is now sort of starting to play out in the current time with Joel.
Yeah, it's interesting, but, you know, she kind of had her pathway paved for her. She just didn't even realize it. And she, even though she wanted to rebel and, you know, go on her own way of doing things, she always circled back to that moment where she was going to eventually want to lead to, or at least tell them that she was wanting to lead to.
Like, this whole conversation kind of echoes what we've seen in the modern time with Joel too, because she starts out quite rebellious, just doing whatever she wants. But then now that Joel's injured, she has that moment to, oh, I have to go down this leadership, pull my head in line, but instead of getting a talk, she's just thrown into a situation where it's either do that or you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's really interesting that she was able to kind of, it's like she almost learned from her previous life experiences and was able to adapt those into her current situation.
Yeah, they do a great job of sort of making her a real life person, not just, oh, okay, I guess I just have to deal with this now. Like, there's an actual reason, and she knows sort of how to handle that thought process. And then the next scene, we see her alone in her dorm, reading her iconic Savage Starlight comics and listening to music. We see the switchblade that we know she has in the modern time next to her bed, which I thought was a nice touch. Cool Mortal Kombat poster on the wall. And then, did you notice the cassette tapes that it pans over as well?
No.
So as we sort of explore this room with the camera shots, we see a couple of cassette tapes sitting on her desk, and they end up being very important cassette tapes for later in the episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's, I think they showed 2 songs. So one of the cassette tapes is Etta James' I've Got You, Babe.
Okay.
Which is a song that they then play later in a dance sequence with Riley.
Okay.
Because in that scene, they're listening to those cassettes. And then I'll probably find it like halfway through this episode, but the other cassette tape, they play that in another point as well. And I was like, that's cool that they kind of suggested that those tapes were going to become important, but not linger on it too long.
Not directly telling you. Yeah, no, that is really fun. I love when things happen like that. You just like casually see something and then later on you see it again and you're like, oh, wait a second.
There it is. It was Aha's Take on Me, and that was the other cassette tape.
Okay.
And that we hear that when they go to the mall and she gets blown away by that escalator.
Gotcha.
So it's like, cool little moment to sort of here's a suggestion and foreshadowing that this is going to come. And I think that's something I've noticed a lot that this series has done. Like, I think it was episode 2 where they pushed the door open and it made the sound of the clickers. We mentioned last episode they played the Depeche Mode song that they also played in episode 1. So there's a lot of like, they plant the seeds and then just leave it and don't mention it again, and then
revisit it later.
And then later they come back to it, which is very cool.
Yeah, in a really subtle way too. So it's fun.
And then while Ellie's sitting in her room, someone is sneaking in her window. We don't know who it is, but this person grabs Ellie, and it's like, oh no, what's happening right now? She's in danger, but it's Riley. What did you think of that moment?
Well, I thought Ellie was about to throw hands for a second there, until she realized what was going on, and it was like, oh shit. And then in my head, I go, oh great, is this like a person coming to get, payback for putting the other girl in the infirmary from earlier? Like, that's the first thing that went through my head was, great, you're screwed.
And I guess for you, like, not knowing who Riley was, it was a very interesting scene too, because as soon as they say Riley, I'm like, oh, okay, this is her friend. But I guess for you, it's kind of like, oh, who the hell is this Riley girl?
Yeah, because the only thing that wouldn't have even given it. I was gonna say, like, the Mortal Kombat poster that's hanging in the room when she when they discovered the Mortal Kombat like cabinet game before, and she was like, oh yeah, my friend used to talk about this game or whatever. So in my head, I'm like, all right, well, she's got to have like a friend somewhere in that room, probably. Like, where's her roommate or something? But it didn't dawn on me that it was the person coming through the damn window.
Yeah, that's another one of those plant the seed callback moments where we got the Mortal Kombat cabinet in what, episode 2?
Yeah, because it's in the gas station.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we learn that Riley has been missing for the past 3 weeks, which is probably why she has been very sort of rebellious and troublesome. And Ellie says she thought Riley was dead, which I guess is a very sad moment where she thinks her best friend has left her and is now dead. But it turns out that she left to join the Fireflies, which Ellie is, at first, doesn't believe her, just like brushes it off, makes a joke out of it. But then when she learns out that, no, it's actually true, she did join the Fireflies, she's not happy about this. She's very angry.
Yeah, because she's still, like, under that whole Fedra thing where, you know, she thinks that they're trying to do good by people, and
yeah, she calls them anarchists.
Everything's going to be fine. Yeah. So yeah, in her head, she goes like, "Why'd you side with the enemy?" Essentially, is how she's looking at it.
So then Riley basically says, "Come with me. I want to show you something." Ellie's not too happy because she has drills in a few hours, and where she learns to kill fireflies. She even says, and then she has a little embarrassed moment where she does not want to get changed in front of Riley, which I thought was funny and cute and also weird. Like, they've clearly been roommates for quite some time, so surely that's happened before.
Yeah, because in that kind of a setup, you would think that they have like public bathrooms or showers, or common showers, whatever it is. So you would think that at one point in time they've seen each other, you know, getting changed at one point.
Yeah, but yeah.
Oh.
So
at least she's modest.
So then they sneak out. They're exploring the quarantine zone, trying to sneak past a bunch of guards, and then they climb into this building and they come across a dead body in the hallway. How are you feeling in this moment?
Not so hot. I just presumed that the worst was going to probably happen going through my head, and I feel like for Ellie, this might have been the first time she really saw like a dead body up close and personal. So, because we've never seen, like, there's not been any, you know, hint that she's seen dead bodies or whatever. So I didn't really know what was going to happen with them at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I at first was like, oh no, this is going to be one of those like infected that has kind of grown into the wall, but it turns out it's not. It's some guy that has basically OD'd on alcohol and pills, and then the floor collapses and it's like, oh crap.
Yeah, that was another thing. I was like, oh great, is like a horde coming out of the ground again? Like, what's happening?
They continue on. Ellie asks Riley, why did you even join the Fireflies, and how did it happen? And basically Riley was like, yeah, a woman saw me sneaking around and thought I could be useful in that manner, and we later in the episode get that tied back in and find out that the person was Marlene, which I thought was a very cool little moment to tie all of these threads together rather than just having sort of scattered bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah, because that explains why, you know, Ellie probably like knew her name and knew her captor. So it was just kind of an interesting way how she didn't react 100% negatively to Marlene when she was kidnapped by her.
Mm-hmm. And I also like that they talk about the Fireflies blowing up the depot and Riley essentially saying it was propaganda bullshit. I think that's one of those important, small but really important lines, because it makes it a little bit more grey on the Fireflies and Fedra, like which one's good, which one's bad. Are they even really making any progress in this fight against each other, or are they just slowly killing each other?
Yeah, because both of them are essentially, they want the same things, just they're going about it the wrong way. So yeah, it's very interesting to see this kind of take place and the kind of conflict that Ellie essentially has with herself eventually, I think.
And then we get to the really iconic moment from the DLC standing. We see the the shopping mall that's all boarded up and is apparently clear but has been boarded up just for safety reasons, and they decide they're going to sneak in there. What did you think of the moment where Riley tells Ellie, just go in there, turn right, get down to the end of the hallway and stay there. And she goes down there, and then the lights flick on. What did you think of that moment?
Yeah, that was an intimidating moment for me to watch just because I didn't know what was going to happen with Ellie. And, just because they say a building's clear doesn't mean shit. So if someone tells me, like, just go through that door and, it'll be fine. Fuck if I'm not going to trust you. I don't care how close we are. I don't know what's around that corner.
Yeah, but I guess that, like you said, that does show how much Ellie and Riley have trust in each other, that she is willing to just, okay, I'll go and have a look in this building and stand here when you tell me to, and then the lights like flick on in waves. I thought that was perfectly done.
Yeah, no, it was just, it gave me a little bit of anxiety. Like this show has definitely raised my anxiety levels in certain scenes.
I thought it was a beautiful shot though, as it like all clicks on and you get all the really bright colors that we sort of haven't seen in this show. Like we've seen oranges and some greens and things like that, and white, a lot of white in the last episode, but this one was lots of like bright fluorescent pinks and things like that. It's like, okay, this is going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, all the signs for all the different stores and stuff like that, and just you can tell that it's going to be a very overwhelming kind of thing for Ellie to experience, I think.
What sort of, did you see and make note of many of the stores that we saw?
I don't think so. I thought that most of them were just kind of generic, but I'm probably way off on that one. Nothing's been generic about this show. So.
No, they were all like actual stores, which I thought was very cool. We had Esprit, Foot Locker, Body Shop, Victoria's Secret. There's a CVS and
I do remember Victoria's Secret.
CVS, GameStop. Then later we get to the food court, and there's Panda Express, Subway, A&W, Macho Nacho. I'm not sure if that's a real place or not.
Never heard of it. Maybe it's like a different state or something.
So it was cool that they actually kept real stores and definitely like stuck to that ground. This, in reality, this isn't just some crazy fantasy story, even though there are infected zombie-like creatures.
Yeah, no, it gives it like a lot of makes you question a lot of things, like if this could be a reality situation with how much real kind of objects there are in it.
And then we get Ellie being just stunned and mind blown by an escalator, which I thought was cool, and cool to see her like run up and down it just like a crazy kid would do if the first time they see an escalator.
Yeah, it's really, I like watching those moments where she sees things that she's never seen before in operation.
And then they continue walking along and they start talking about all of those shops and how some of them have been looted, and I thought that was a fun moment where Ellie's kind of like, so why are some of these empty and others aren't? And well, it's like, oh, it's because people took the things that they needed, and she's like, so shoes, but not soap.
Priorities, as long as you can run from the infected, who cares if you smell good?
And it's very like reminiscent of when we do see riots and people looting the high end, totally unimportant things. Yeah,
like let me go grab that $900 TV and a PlayStation. I'm not going to worry about the essentials. It's fine.
Yeah, so the Body Shop and Victoria's Secret remain unlooted, and we get that very touching scene with them, and funny, like a moment that injects comedy into the show without it being over the top and silly. Them just chatting about Victoria's Secret, and it looks uncomfortable.
Yeah, on the mannequins and stuff. It's really funny because it's almost like their innocence too, because like most teenagers would be like, oh, that doesn't look comfortable, I don't want to wear that. Who would want to do that?
And then Riley makes the joke of, oh, I was just imagining you wearing it, and Ellie is kind of like taken aback, but also like, what? That's
weird, but what?
And then as Riley walks away, Ellie takes a moment to make sure her hair looks nice in the reflection. It's like, There's a bit more to this friendship.
Yeah, yeah, that's when you start to see like the little baby sparks that are happening, like just very subtle, subtle moments.
Were you expecting to sort of see this type of like love story in this episode?
The only reason why it didn't throw me off is because I've heard about that. Not the like no one specifically told me that it was Riley that she had like a thing for or whatever. But I do know that it's definitely touched upon, and I think it's touched in the second one as well, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? In the second game, yeah. So that's I think what brought it up to my attention initially is when the second game was released.
Okay, yeah, because I'd be interested to see sort of the general reaction to that, because yeah, like to have such a lead character as a queer person, it's like, oh, that's a unique storytelling point, and one that was kind of controversial at the time when the DLC was released, because it does kind of come out of nowhere, but in the series they did sort of, again, plant those seeds very subtly in the beginning when Tess asked her if she had a boyfriend, and she's like, no.
Right. Yeah, and it's weird because I know, like, for me, it's perfectly normal. Like, that doesn't, phase me at all. I completely see where it's coming from. But I do feel like there's probably going to be a lot of odd, mixed reception to that because not everybody, especially people who haven't played the game, I'm sure that they're going to go right back to oh, look, they're trying to do this again. Like they do with
trying to
every
make this show work for no reason.
Yeah, and what a lot of people who've never played the game don't understand is that it came out way before that was a thing now, So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I had no issue with it, but yeah, like, I do like that they did sort of set the scene a little earlier in the series rather than, like with the game, the DLC came out, I was like, oh, okay, I guess Ellie's a lesbian now.
Yeah, so... yeah, we'll see how it is, but I know that there's probably going to be a ton of those people that are just very all right, let's boycott this stupid show now because of this. Whatever.
But as the episode progresses, I think they do a lot to, and in the DLC, they did a lot to really establish there is a lot of love between these two, and it's not just superficial love at the top, like...
They generally care for each other.
Yeah, with the Victoria's Secret moment, like, it proves that it's not just like a lustful relationship. There's actual care between these two.
Yeah.
And then we get to another very cool moment, the merry-go-round, which Ellie has never seen anything like this before. She basically says, I'm on a magic horse with 1,000,000 lights. How can it get any better than this?
Yeah, it's such a fun kind of thing to say, like her reaction and the way that she describes it, because most kids, they know, oh yeah, it's a merry-go-round, whatever, you sit on it and it's really cool. But for someone who's never seen that kind of a thing, it's just a really fun look. And Bella did such a great job with like her genuine kind of surprise face, slash like almost like overstimulated by it.
Yeah. This is definitely her best episode in terms of her portrayal. Like, we've seen her angry, feisty, and all of that, but this one we sort of get to see her range, because she goes from happy, loving, caring to then towards the end of the episode the rage comes back out, and we sort of, that sets the tone for what she is moving through the timeline.
Yeah, no, it's a great portrayal to see someone so young be able to give out all of these kinds of emotions, especially in just one episode, and do it so gracefully.
I do love the moment too where they're on the merry-go-round. They've both continued to drink the whiskey, which is funny, because she's 13 or 14. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, okay, well, that's how we're gonna do it.
But they kind of catch each other looking at each other lovingly, and they kind of go to acknowledge it, but then just quickly move on.
Yeah, I feel like with them, they either don't know how to approach it, or they're afraid to because they don't really know if the other one is feeling the exact same way or not. So they don't want to like presume something and be completely wrong about it. So they just both kind of don't say anything about it.
Yeah, but Riley does sort of deliver the line that Ellie was the one thing that she misses from the Fedra quarantine zone time. So it's kind of like, okay, maybe this is a mutual thing. This isn't just one-sided. And they spot the photo booth and run across to there, and I love that Ella's like, is that a time machine?
Yeah, that was such a funny line. I loved that.
And Riley basically said, yeah, I've been wanting to do this with you. And I thought this was a very sweet and funny scene as well, where neither of them really know what this thing does. They're kind of just like, I guess we just put money in it and see what happens. And it snaps that first shot and they're like, oh, okay. So they quickly have to pull a bunch of poses. And I love that they're all the actual like direct poses that they have in the game.
Oh, are they
yeah,
really?
So basically that film strip that comes out, they show that in
fun.
the game, and it's shot for shot. I was like, that's really cool that they've gone into such detail to make sure that it's all the same.
And recreated. That's fantastic. I love that that's been a consistent thing throughout this entire episode, is that when they do pull something straight from the game, it's pretty much a carbon copy for the almost to a T.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a lot of Craig Mazin's love for the games and Neil Druckmann being involved in the series to make sure it is authentic.
Oh yeah, because if they messed up, especially with this, if they screwed this up, people would have been up in arms about a lot of stuff, I feel.
And then following the photo booth, they head to the arcade. Another awesome scene. As soon as Ellie walks in, she's like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yep, I love that. And it's so much fun to see them just kind of being kids and, you know, having a blast, you know, with no cares and no worries about anything.
And I like that we find out that Riley has been setting up this whole sort of, I guess it's essentially a date night for them, where she came in the day before and spent an hour cracking open the change machine just so that they had the quarters to play the machines.
Yep. I thought that was such a cute thing. Like, you really can see like how much Riley really does care about Ellie at that point, because she went through all of these different steps to make sure everything went out perfectly.
And again, I love that these weren't all random generic made up machines as well. Like, I was looking in the background and I saw Frogger, Tetris, Attack from Mars, Daytona, Battlezone, Metroid, the biggest one, Mortal Kombat 2, which they spend hours playing,
Nice.
Joust, and Galaga. So it's all like, I don't know whether they went to get like an actual arcade and dirtied it up for this scene, or if they just bought all of these old arcade machines just to set up in a set.
Yeah, or they could have even like rented them out or something, because I know a lot of collectors rent their machines out to different things. So it's really interesting. I'd love to know how they got their hands on all those cabinets, because that would have been really fun to find
I guess,
out.
yeah, not all of them. I don't think we see all of them like running or anything, so they could have just been like prop
Props or something.
recreations, and then the only one that kind of really had to work was Mortal Kombat, which is a pretty
Mortal Kombat.
common machine around town. And I love that they sit there, they decide they're going to play some Mortal Kombat, they pick Raiden and Melina, and then Riley just says, just mash the buttons. It's like, yes, that's exactly how you should play Mortal Kombat.
It's exactly how you play Mortal Kombat, and Melina is one of my favorites, my top two, so I was really proud of that moment.
And we get to see a fatality, which was cool, and Riley admits, yeah, I've been here a few times, which is why I'm pretty good at this, and absolutely destroys Ellie the first time, but they sit there and they play it for that long that Ellie sort of starts to pick it up and manages to hit a fatality herself.
Yep, it was kind of just like a win. I felt so I felt Ellie's accomplishment, and she felt so proud of herself for finally figuring it out.
And their love story sort of continues as they look like they're about to kiss, and then Ellie gets like awkward and kind of just like, okay, we're gonna go. and wants to go back to her
Yep.
dorm.
Yeah, I kind of almost felt bad for Riley. Like I was like, oh yes, 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 it's gonna happen. You guys are gonna, it's gonna be perfect. And then,
And meanwhile, we are shown an infected kind of waking up in your favorite store, the Halloween shop. And I was like, okay, here we go.
yeah, perfect setting for that one. Let me tell you.
Were you sort of expecting, given that we'd sort of spent so long in this mall with nothing happening, were you expecting to then cut across and see a random infected waking up in the mall?
I was thinking that it was gonna happen. Like something in my head was telling me, all right, nothing's happened. It can't just be like a all, rainbows and lollipops kind of episode where everything's going as planned. Something's gotta happen.
Yeah, it's The Last of Us.
And what better? Yeah, I was like, what better location than a damn mall with like 100 stores in it? Like that thing could be anywhere, and they would never know it until it was too late.
So then we go to the food court. Like we said, we saw a bunch of stores here, and Riley gives Ellie the No Pun Intended Volume 2 book, which was another cool moment, and I think this is what sets Ellie down the path of, yeah, I love these books, and anytime she gets them, she's super excited and happy and forms a bond with people through these books.
Yeah, and I think it's also her way of holding on to like Riley in a sense, just because that was the person who first gave that to her, so she's never gonna be able to like forget her or anything like that. She'll always remember that kind of bond that they had.
And then I love how they read out some of the jokes and they understand a couple, and then there's a couple, one in particular that they don't. So the first one they read out was, what did the frustrated cannibal do?
Okay.
He threw up his hands.
What? Oh yeah, I do remember that. Because I laughed a little too hard at that one.
I figured you would. And then the next one is...
Yeah, it's my book.
What did the triangle say to the circle? You're so pointless.
Okay, yeah.
And then...
I'm not going to be mad about it.
And then the joke that they don't get is, how does a computer get drunk? It takes screenshots, and they don't know what a screenshot is.
And they don't get that. That's right. It's so funny.
Which is true, because they're both just like, what the heck is a screenshot? It's like, yeah, if you don't have the internet or a smartphone, you're not going to really know what, and computers, you're not going to know what a screenshot is.
Right, yeah, you can't. That's so funny.
And then before they sort of have their little argument, we hear one last joke, which we never get the end of, but I thought, I'm going to deliver you the end now. What do you call an alligator
I'm
wearing
ready
a
for
vest?
it. What do you call an alligator wearing a vest?
An investigator.
Yes. All right. I love it. All these bad dad jokes. Give them to me. It's the best.
And then, but then we see them have sort of a falling out and an argument when Ellie finds the bomb stash and realizes that Riley didn't just come back for her and didn't set all this up just for her, because she's been posted here to protect the bombs, and she storms off saying none of this was even about me, but it really was, because it was Riley essentially trying to say goodbye to Ellie before she gets posted somewhere else.
Yeah, it was kind of a mixed emotions kind of moment with that, because, on one hand, Ellie is thinking that she's being lied to, which is kind of sad to see her kind of get her little heart broken a little bit by thinking that way.
Yeah, again, this was another one of those really heartbreaking moments in episodes where everything seems fine, but then one small thing happens and it all gets flipped upside down, and you're like, oh God, I feel horrible for Ellie and everyone involved in this situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like there was no happy ending really for it. She felt really betrayed, and obviously young kids don't bounce back from that very quickly. It's a earth-shattering moment.
And she tries not to sort of let it show that she is upset as well. She tries to stay really cold and separate from it, and just like, okay, let's just go. Just take me back. I don't want to be here anymore. She storms off, but then as she's walking along, she sort of maybe starts to reconsider and turns around to go back to try and find Riley, but suddenly hears screams in the distance. And what were you thinking at that moment?
Well, I knew someone was going to get screwed over. That's unfortunately how this stupid show goes. It's like, oh, yeah, everything's fine, everything's not fine.
But then we learn that the screams weren't actually from Riley, they were just from the Halloween store and some of the props. Did that shock you?
Yeah, it kind of did, because in my head I'm like, all right, well, yeah, it's got to be someone that's getting attacked or something like that. And then when they panned over to the Halloween thing, I go, oh, of course it would be something like that, because that's what would always happen. Spirit Halloween will be the last thing in America over here, and that's exactly what would happen. Some stupid baby doll would go off.
And we learn that she's hidden herself out in here because that was supposed to be the last stop on their little adventure, and just like you, this would have been Ellie's favorite place.
It was a dope store. Like, I wish we had one year-round over here.
And then in this moment, we sort of learn why Riley was kind of so intrigued and why she wanted to join the Fireflies, because she tells Ellie, like, you never knew what it was like to have a family or to belong, whereas she had a family and then they died and then she was left alone. So her reason for joining the Fireflies was to kind of have that feeling again.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, like, she just wants to be, wanted by someone, I feel, and this is her only choice of doing that, is to join this group who feels like she feels like they're her family now.
And sort of Ellie kind of finally understands and accepts that Riley is going to leave. So, but before she does, they have one little last moment of fun where they dress up in the silly Halloween masks, Ellie as a wolf and Riley as a sort of zombie clown thing. They dance around to the Etta James tape.
I loved that moment.
I thought that was very cool. And Ellie, like we said, she accepted it, but she also has one last attempt and begs Riley not to go. And Riley agrees. She's going to stay, and they finally get their moment where they kiss. And I love, like, Bella's portrayal in this moment. She just looked so happy and proud of what they had just achieved, and it's easily the happiest moment that we see Ellie have in the series.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's such a, like, wholesome moment, and you feel like a big weight has been lifted off of their shoulders during this really unfortunate time for both of them, but for some reason you just get that really lighthearted feel out of this whole scene.
And then the happiness is quickly shattered when the infected guy, like, lumbers into the store and tackles both of the girls, and Riley doesn't move, and it's like, oh no, she's, like, hit her head and is potentially dead. But we sort of, did you notice that they show Riley's sort of arm twitch weirdly as well?
No, I didn't catch that, but now I get to re-look for that.
So they get knocked down, she doesn't move, but then before we pan across to see where Ellie is, we see her arm just kind of do this, and it's like, oh no. They give you that clue that she's been infected, because in those early episodes, everyone that did end up becoming infected, like, started to do the weird twitches before it happened. And
yeah,
the infected continues. It chases after Ellie. She's in trouble, but then she stabs it in the neck, and I was like, uh-oh. But Riley comes in and belts it with a bat and eventually saves her, but they both realise that they've been bitten. And I think the two contrasting reactions is very cool in that moment as well, with Ellie just raging and being angry that it has happened, and Riley is just sad and depressed and, like,
accepting
resigned to the fact that well, we're screwed now. There's nothing we can do at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, like, they did such a good job too, like fighting back. Like, they didn't just give up in the middle of it or whatever. It was, they fought to the very end with that thing, and just to see, Riley kind of just accept her fate, and then Ellie being completely opposite of that is just, it's a really emotional moment for both of them, really.
And then rather than just kind of continue on and see what the outcome was, we have a quick little jump back to Joel laying in the basement alone, and Ellie frantically still searching for medical supplies, but it's only a brief little departure before we go back to Ellie and Riley well, Ellie's raging at this moment. She's smashing every cabinet she can get to.
Yep.
Riley's just resigned to the fact that it's over, and she's sitting there basically telling Ellie, like, we have two options. We take the quick way out, but she doesn't like that option. The other option is to just keep doing what we're doing for the rest of the night and lose our minds together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like a really sad moment for Riley, but she wants to. At the same time, you can see how much she, or how she's dedicated to Ellie. God, I can't talk today. But you can see that her dedication to Ellie and how she doesn't want them to be separated at the end of it and everything. She wants them to be together and just kind of go through it together. That way they never really lose each other.
Yeah, like she basically says, I want as much time with you as I can. Like, 2 minutes or 2 days, we don't give up. I don't want to give that up. So, super heartbreaking line.
Yeah,
We're like,
really
oh God.
Heartbreaking moment. Yeah, especially for ones their age, to have to kind of deal with that together. It's a really rough scene.
So then they sit, they hold hands, they cuddle and cry, and that's the end of that sequence. But obviously we know Ellie survived somehow because she is immune. I'm glad they didn't show her having to kill Riley in that moment as well. They just...
Oh, did they do that in the DLC?
No, but obviously she had to, because
well, yeah,
Ellie survived.
I get that, but I'm just
Riley's
saying...
no longer around, so at some point she had to take her out.
No, I get that. I'm just glad that they didn't really go that in depth in the game or the show, because I would have probably really lost it and just shut it off at that point. Never
that
going
would
back.
be an incredibly heartbreaking moment. So I'm glad they didn't dig the knife in that deep.
Yeah, they didn't pull a Sarah.
Yeah. So then we jump back to Ellie, much like she did with Riley, laying there holding Joel's hand and cuddling up to him, which I thought was a sad moment where it's like she has been with the two people she loved the most to the very end, because is Joel gonna make it out of this situation? And we see her stitching him up with what looked like fishing line, and incredibly painful looking.
And probably not sterile whatsoever.
But yeah,
So
the wound didn't look too crash hot, so I think it was just do whatever we can, and the episode ends on that. And again, it's one of those like the last episode, it's like,
what's gonna happen moments.
Are we about to lose one of our iconic characters, which is incredibly sad.
Yeah, it really leads you into so many different directions and just kind of makes you ponder what's next for them.
And with the week-to-week releases, it's kind of like, I just need the next episode now. I need to see how Joel comes out of this somehow. If Joel comes out of this somehow.
Yeah, they like doing that to us.
So in terms of the rating for the episode, what would you give this one?
This is a 5 for me, 100%, just on the sheer acting capability of both girls in this entire sequence.
Yep, yeah, this one's easily a 5. One of the most emotional episodes of the series, and like we said, it's easily Bella Ramsey's best performance, and showcases so much range in this episode.
Absolutely. I mean, let me just say, I'm glad that it got picked up for a second season.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
saw that. And I didn't think it was going to take that long, so I'm really glad that they are going forward with that. It's great. Um, but yeah, I really hope that they stick with the cast and they don't change it like some people are asking.
Well, they've said Bella is going to continue to play Ellie. Thank God.
Okay, that's good because honestly, she's got that so down pat now, and I don't see anybody else really portraying Ellie the way she has, and she's given it her all.
Yeah, no, that'd be a very weird choice to have spent a season with her. I guess she is supposed to be older, but by the time they get to that season, I can't imagine.
She'll be older.
I think they're still writing it, so they're not even set ready to just roll straight into production immediately. So
Nah.
they're probably not going to start production until mid to late this year or even next year. And I can't imagine we get season 2 on TV until at least 2025. They'll probably film.
Yeah.
Probably film season. I imagine that season, well, The Last of Us Part 2, the game is going to be split into 2 seasons. Probably filmed simultaneously, so that they can do 2 and 3 back-to-back years. But I guess in between now and when they begin filming, Bella is she's gonna grow and mature a bit and will fit in with the timeline of the character. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue to continue her in the role.
No. Yeah, no, I'm really glad that's going to happen because, yeah, she's just perfect for it. And, you know, she's really, like I said, given it her all, especially for someone so young. She's such a dedicated actress in her roles, and she really did take it on completely and fill that Ellie persona.
So that's episode 7. We have 2 left, 2 very big episodes coming up. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the commentary booth. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can follow Corrina on Instagram at Miss Corrina Renee, and you can follow me on social media at JamieUps Media and at Pario Magazine. The commentary booth is a fan-funded production of JamieUps Media. You can support the podcast alongside our magazine, Pario Magazine, on Patreon at patreon.com/JamieUps Media. The following people supported at the publisher level or higher, and you cannot fathom how incredibly appreciative we are for their support.